Caught between love and chaos, my girlfriend's emotional storms clash with my need for stability. I don't feel as in October, she says, while I'm left questioning everything. As her world spirals, I'm left wondering, are we fighting for love or just holding on? In October of last year, I 35 years old male began a relationship with my current girlfriend, 26 years old female. We have known each other for 2 years and have always had a very strong connection, sharing jokes and moments while constantly messaging each other. It was pleasant. We were both in other relationships at the time, and since I am a temporary contractor, things did not start out naturally. At some point last year, she began asking questions about the future. For some reason, that gave me the courage to hold her hand during a movie date. She took hold of my arm and we embarked on this journey together. She has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and likely other behavioral issues, as her father committed suicide when she was a child. Her brother is autistic and has attempted suicide twice, which heightens her anxiety. Additionally, her mother is terminally ill, making her a caregiver as well. Her father holds significant importance for her. Her profile picture is an old photo of herself as a child with her father. When I shared a list of important dates in our love story, she pointed out that I had forgotten the most significant one, her father's date of death. This is her background. Furthermore, we both work at the same company and experience a hectic work schedule from January to April, which is just starting to wind down. On top of that, she is also studying. Here are some chronological important events. For 1 month, everything felt like a dream. We made future plans, created a bucket list, and couldn't wait to see each other, texting literally all day. We were completely in love. We shared the news of our relationship with our families during the first week, and we also disclosed it at our workplace. No one was surprised given our bond, and they had already been making jokes about us for a while. While we were working on a bucket list of future plans, she told me she didn't perceive me as just a boyfriend, but she began reflecting on her life and realized she might have found the one without realizing it. We reminisced about past moments where we had hinted at our love for each other, and it felt special. Then, the problems began. During the first weeks at the office, I received a friend request on Facebook. I didn't recognize the name and later realized it belonged to a mutual friend of my girlfriend, one of her exes whom she had mentioned before. I saw a publicly accessible picture of them together, misunderstood the date, and thought it was from 2023 instead of 2021, leading me to believe she was deceiving me. I sent her a message saying I saw something and then withdrew emotionally. She called, but I didn't answer. Eventually, I realized my mistake. I called her back, apologized, and she said she had stopped crying and that it was okay. Our first event or date as an unofficial couple took place at a casino. While at the roulette table, she mentioned that her ex always bet on zero. I felt overwhelmed as I found it strange to mention an ex on a first date. I fell silent and my facial expression changed. She noticed and asked what was wrong. I told her it was unnecessary to bring up her ex. She apologized and we moved on. I forgot about it, but clearly she did not. In November, she received her master's degree diploma. I took her out for dinner, purchased a gift, and congratulated her. I officially asked her to be my girlfriend, and she said yes. She seemed genuinely happy. We went on a weekend trip to Berlin, our first trip together. Everything went well except for the morning after we woke up. She turned her back to me and began scrolling through her phone. Minutes turned into 5, then 10, and then 15 at some point. I became annoyed and asked if it wouldn't make more sense to cuddle given our limited time together. She agreed, but I later realized that for someone with ADHD, needing alone time is significant, and I should have left it alone. She never mentioned this point, nor did she bring up many other issues. On our way back, I inquired about her Christmas plans and discussed having dinner with her family. She indicated that her brother would likely be working. Then December arrived. We had planned a long weekend trip together. I wrote her a nice Christmas gift card. The day before our trip, she sent me a voice message informing me that her mother had broken her hand, so she had to cancel. I told her that it was okay, that she needed to focus on her mother and her studies, and I would be there for her. The next day, I visited to console her, suggesting we could still enjoy a day out at a Christmas market. This was when she first opened up to me. The evening before our meeting, I asked her what time I should arrive, considering she visits her mom every morning. She didn't specify a time. When I asked again, wanting to swim beforehand, she still didn't provide details, only saying I could arrive whenever I was ready. I told her I would be there around 11:00 to 11:30 and that I would send her a message when I was on my way. I ended up arriving home later than I anticipated. It was already around 11:30. I was preparing myself, and since my phone was on WhatsApp, I didn't see the 2 messages she sent asking if I was on my way. I was busy, and I sent her a voice message when I got on the road around 11:45. Upon my arrival, she had put on meditation music. The day was fine, but on the drive back, she asked if I had noticed she had turned off her WhatsApp status. I hadn't seen it. She then asked if we could discuss something. Once we arrived back home, she started crying, saying she felt stressed because I hadn't replied. She explained that she becomes anxious when I am online but do not respond to her messages, which triggers her anxiety. She asked that I keep my last seen and online status turned off to help her. I was surprised but didn't contest it. I comforted her and told her she should do whatever helps her. She received my Christmas card the following day and seemed pleased. January marked the beginning of our busy season at work. I sat down with her and explained that it was going to be tough, as we were both working hard, accumulating a lot of overtime and feeling stressed. We agreed to set aside at least one day every week to maintain our relationship. She confessed that during busy periods, she tends to take advantage of her friends' support and neglects her own self-care by quitting sports. I considered telling her that overworking was unhealthy, but I chose not to interfere. By this time, Fridays became our designated day for her to visit after her studies and spend the night. In early January, we had an extra date on a Monday. I had bought her 2 gifts that she had liked during our Christmas trip. She was very happy with them and we were both enjoying the moment. A couple of weeks later, she returned a gift I had given her and made me happy in doing so. However, from that point forward, things became more challenging. I am not typically a person who expresses emotions much like most men. The Christmas card was one example of my effort. I had been preparing a book documenting our story, complete with future activities and what I love about her. I intended to give it to her as a Valentine's Day gift. I asked if she could save the date for Valentine's Day and her birthday. She informed me that Valentine's Day wasn't significant for her. I simply wanted to show her some extra love and attention, but I received a strange reaction which made me feel uneasy. When I sought to clarify, she felt attacked, leading to some verbal disagreement. We eventually agreed to do something together, but not to make it any kind of commercial endeavor. I changed my mind, decided to give her a different gift, and allocated the book as a birthday present instead. The dynamics began shifting. Neither of us sent many loving emojis, we were texting less with most of the communication coming from my side. At one point, I felt fed up and decided not to message her at all. She didn't text me for 4 days, not a single word, neither on WhatsApp nor in our work chat. One day, as I left the office, I spotted her outside. She had come in to work overtime. She was careful around our colleagues and I was feeling cold, so I simply said hello and walked past her. She pulled me towards her and kissed me unexpectedly. I was surprised, I hadn't anticipated that. I then messaged her on Teams to see if we could go home together, which she agreed to. Outside, she hugged me and mentioned that she was very tired, exhausted from work, dealing with her mother and her studies. She expressed relief that she didn't feel the pressure to be social around me, noting that her social battery was empty and that she wasn't messaging anyone at all. She felt it was better not to message anyone to avoid stress and to see me on Fridays when things felt more manageable. That Friday, we went out for dinner. This was around 3 weeks ago. I was fasting and we were running late. Her meal arrived, but mine had not yet come. She started eating without waiting. I had expected her to offer me just one piece from her plate, but she didn't. I felt really bad but refrained from commenting. We walked home and spent a normal evening together. I asked if everything was fine, and she replied that everything was okay but acknowledged that our sexual life was lacking. At the beginning of our relationship, she had shown a lot of interest and was even willing to be intimate in public spaces. We intentionally waited to have sex, and when we finally did, I found it difficult to perform due to time constraints. While we had been sexting leading up to that, she seemed distant when it came to intimacy in the bedroom. I told her that I preferred foreplay, but we hadn't engaged in much of it. She gave oral sex the first time and after I asked for it months later, but she acted very distant during our intimate moments, just expecting me to become aroused without any effort and then to have sex and leave her. This behavior in conjunction with relationship issues, her distant demeanor, only having sex on Fridays after a long workweek, and my performance anxiety made things more complicated. Sometimes I would lose my erection and other times I struggled to become aroused. I never thought she perceived this as a problem until she mentioned it. I saw it as an issue as well, but was hopeful it would improve after the busy season when the stress would subside. The day after one of our dinners, I texted her to see how she was doing and to ask if she had managed to fix everything she had been planning. I included a love emoji and a cute sticker of us together. Her response was unexpectedly casual, almost as if I was a friend. In the moment I broke, she had never addressed me like that. A few weeks prior, I had accidentally referred to her by her name and she asked me not to do so. Finding it odd, I agreed and hadn't done it again. This felt similar. Instead of getting upset, I simply said, "Hey," she responded, noting that I had added an extra letter to the word. This reaction felt very strange to me. I apologized, saying, "Oops, my mistake," while calling her by name again. She read it but did not reply. The next morning, I sent her a long message expressing how unhappy I felt, how emotionally distant she seemed, and that I didn't even know if she cared about me. She suggested we should discuss this in person rather than through WhatsApp, which led to the conclusion that she didn't care, given that she was my girlfriend. When we talked, it didn't lead to any resolution. She mentioned she felt stressed by the fact that she couldn't message me but didn't elaborate further, and I shared my thoughts without reaching a conclusion. The day after our conversation, I texted her again expressing that I wanted to see her. I visited her on Thursday evening. She confessed that she was unhappy, that our situation wasn't how a relationship should be, and that she constantly felt stressed. She expressed doubts about the future and said her feelings were fading, she just didn't feel the same way she did in October. We didn't arrive at a conclusion. She kissed me goodbye, and later that night I sent her a message telling her I was home. She replied in the middle of the night, but she was also studying for her exams scheduled for Tuesday. I told her I felt bad and suggested we could discuss things after her exam. She then messaged me saying it would be best if she didn't come on Friday, as she was not feeling relaxed and needed to focus on studying. I agreed and assured her I would not bother her until Tuesday, which I did. That Sunday evening, she messaged me asking if I was okay and how work had been. During the previous 3 days, I had felt mentally broken, utterly defeated. I called her, and when she answered, I expressed how down I felt and that I needed to speak with her. I went to her place, bringing with me the book I had prepared for her birthday. I poured out everything to her, how deeply I loved her, how anxious I was during the beginnings of our relationship, and how intense my feelings for her were, all the sentiments that were previously expressed in the book but that I had never verbalized. She reacted quite coldly, questioning why I hadn't expressed such feelings during the last 3 months, and pointing out how different I seemed compared to the guy she had known for 2 years, who had been easygoing and indifferent. She said she needed to process everything. I left the book for her and communicated that my feelings had always been there, I simply struggled to articulate them. She assured me she would read it after her exams. In the days that followed, we communicated normally at work, engaging in casual conversations. She was busy and I was busy. I wondered what she would do about our relationship. I asked her if she wanted anything special for Friday, but she stated that she didn't need anything and promised to call me after her studies. I anticipated her breaking up with me, but she didn't. Instead, she expressed that she wasn't feeling well enough to come over and sleep at my place, explaining she couldn't pretend that everything was okay. I understood, responding that we had 3 options: break up, take a break, or come together to have a conversation. She determined that breaking up at that moment would be too harsh and that she needed time to recover and think. The conversation went well, we shared jokes and it felt okay. We understood one another. We also discussed the circumstances that were less than ideal. I assured her that I would not disturb her. I asked if we could chat, and she replied that having random casual conversations here and there would be suitable. I decided not to reach out to her, wanting to give her space. On Monday, which is actually this past Monday, she was also at the office. She acted strangely. I spotted her twice, but she turned and walked away both times without even saying hello. I felt devastated. It's one thing to confront issues in a relationship, but to act in such a manner feels very bad. In the morning, I was getting coffee when she came out of her office. I glimpsed her in the mirror before she promptly turned back. I felt really bad. Later, while I was in a meeting with others, she walked past and waved at me, to which I smiled back. Later, I found myself alone in a meeting room. She approached the pantry to grab some fruit. I observed her see me, hesitate for a moment, and then retreat. I felt odd about it. I texted her for the first time that day, telling her I sensed she was hesitant and that I was in a meeting but she could join me. She claimed she hadn't seen me and only needed to grab fruit. That felt strange since there was a distance of 2 meters between us. Later, she walked by our meeting room with her team and ignored me completely. We have mutual friends in my team, and she didn't even come into our room to say hello. Even my colleagues noticed how strange her behavior was. I felt awful. I was frustrated and decided to ask her for an explanation. I approached her office and requested to talk. During our conversation, I stated that the situation felt awkward. She acknowledged this but offered no explanation. I asked what she meant by needing time because I didn't want to be left waiting for months in this situation. She said she needed to complete her own deadline, which is this week, while I would have my own deadline. She finishes on Thursday, and then she planned to think over the weekend, which also happens to be her birthday. I agreed with this approach. I conveyed that I cared about her well-being, and even if we were to break up, I was concerned for her health. She said everything was just too much, and then she started to cry. I consoled her and apologized, explaining that this hadn't been my intention. She told me she had been doing well until she saw me and that her day had turned negative again. We then said our goodbyes. Afterward, I discussed what had happened with my colleagues. One of them also witnessed us hugging. They expressed that she shouldn't have acted that way, indicating that she ought to have simply come over to greet me. I concurred we can have conflicts, and while she is entitled to feel bad, I have never yelled at her, insulted her, or threatened her. This behavior is indicative of someone who dislikes another. I sent her a message about how her actions had affected me, voicing my frustration. She didn't see it as she had gone to bed. I regretted my earlier messages and deleted them. She asked in the morning why I had deleted my message. I explained that I had felt bad the previous evening and reacted emotionally, but afterward I regretted it as there was no need for such behavior. I suggested we calm down and discuss things later. She didn't read my message. I did not communicate with her through our work chat, and she reciprocated the silence. Perhaps she was upset or concentrating on her assignments. She has peculiar habits around social media. During busy periods, she only checks her WhatsApp in the morning or before going to bed. On workdays, she sometimes even sets her status to out of the office just to focus. I am uncertain if this is an ADHD thing. Since Monday, we have not contacted each other. I am feeling mentally overwhelmed. I am frustrated with her behavior. Monday felt like a boundary was crossed. Having discussed our situation like adults on Friday and then encountering this childish behavior on Monday is troubling. I'm at a loss regarding what I should feel, think, or how to address this if she refuses to communicate. Part of me says to break up and walk away. Another part believes it boils down to communication, external pressures, and stress that caused us both to act this way. During our 2 days of friendship, our communication was flawless, and our feelings in October were genuine. I genuinely don't know what to think, what she might do next, or how I should respond. I just need some general advice regarding her behavior and what actions I should take. Story 2. My twin sister Abby has always tried to steal my life. When I went on vacation, she pretended to be me and tried to seduce my husband. You can't call the police, I'm your wife, she lied. Now she's facing 14 years in prison, but will she ever stop? I am a 24-year-old woman with a twin sister who has been wishing for my failure since our birth. For the purpose of this story, I will refer to her as Abby. Abby and I are identical twins. Our mother was the type of parent who dressed us alike, enrolled us in the same activities, and even requested that we be placed in the same elementary school classes. Since we wore matching outfits, we required very obvious name tags on our desks. However, as we became more aware of ourselves, likely around the age of 6, our individual personalities began to emerge. Abby was fond of dresses, princesses, and anything deemed extremely feminine, and she had many friends from an early age. In contrast, I was more of a tomboy and tended to be reserved, meaning I always kept my circle quite small even as a child. I was shy and preferred to avoid attention, so I was content with Abby receiving most of it. My parents were high school sweethearts, the quintessential cheerleader and football player, much like characters from an 80s movie. By the time we reached high school, Abby followed my mother's path. She became cheer captain, dated the quarterback, and was crowned queen at homecoming dances, suggesting that my parents favored her slightly more than me, whether intentionally or not. I remained quiet. I dyed my blonde hair black to distinguish myself from her, and my group of friends remained minimal. Abby's sinister tendencies emerged early on. Initially, my parents had a large floor bed that we shared when we were old enough to walk around. However, this arrangement soon proved ineffective. Though I do not recall it myself, my parents recounted numerous occasions when they entered the room to find one of us crying, only to discover Abby sitting on me and hitting me. They installed a baby monitor camera in our room and discovered that she was waking up, climbing on me while I was still asleep, and then slapping, hitting, bouncing on, and scratching me. They sent Abby to toddler counseling and converted my mother's craft room into a room for me. I never learned the outcome of those counseling sessions, and I never heard of her being diagnosed with any specific condition. Mind you, this behavior occurred when we were just 1 or 2 years old. As we grew older, she engaged in petty mischief. She stole from me, ruined my belongings, hurt herself to make it seem like I was the one who hit her, and hid her items in my room to falsely accuse me of theft. She destroyed her own possessions, such as teddy bears, drawings, books, and clothes, blaming me for the damage. Consequently, I often found myself in trouble and developed resentment for both her and my parents. When we entered high school, Abby and I ended up in the same math class. I had always performed well in math, so I rarely monitored my grades. Halfway through the semester, my math teacher asked to speak with me after class. She inquired if I was struggling or if the pace of the class felt overwhelming recently. Confused, I asked why she thought that, and she explained that I had been receiving very low scores on my homework assignments. She expressed confusion, noting my high performance on tests. When I requested to see the assignments in question, she provided one to me. Although I recognized my name on the top of the paper, the answers were not ones I had written down. I assured her that something was amiss as those answers were not mine. She asked if I was claiming that the paper bearing my name was not my work. I requested another copy of the homework and offered to solve the first 2 problems right in front of her, which I did. At this point, it was clear that something was wrong, but neither of us considered Abby as the culprit. Until then, her antics had been limited to home, where she had always left me alone at school. My teacher assured me that she would closely monitor the homework submissions, and a few days later, Abby was caught in the act. Everyone entered the classroom, submitted their homework to the collection tray, and took their seats. After I placed mine in the tray, Abby would remove it, write her name on it, put my name on her version with incorrect answers marked on purpose, and return it to the tray. After speaking with me, my teacher was vigilant about the homework collection, and she witnessed Abby doing just that. My parents were summoned to meetings regarding this issue, and for the remainder of the quarter, my teacher labeled all my assignments with my name in purple ink while doing the same for Abby. She required that Abby submit all her work directly to her, and after that semester, it became a rule that we were never to be placed in the same class again. My parents reinstated her counseling, during which she was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder at 14. I do not understand how ADHD could have led to her behaviors, but that was the conclusion. When we turned 17, Abby attempted to entangle me in legal trouble. She stole my purse while I was asleep, took my car, sped past a police officer, and subsequently fled from him. When she finally pulled over, she presented my driver's license to the officer, explained that her hair was now blonde instead of black due to a recent dye job, and was arrested under my name. We had to attend court to resolve the issue, and shockingly, she faced no actual consequences, just a long grounding from our parents. I will never comprehend how she avoided repercussions for clear identity theft. Consequently, on my 18th birthday, I visited a cosmetic tattoo artist to have prominent yet natural-looking freckles tattooed on my face. I also returned for eyebrow microblading to darken them and received a small amount of lip filler. I had saved up a considerable sum from working, and birthday funds augmented that total. My mother also contributed to these changes as my birthday present. This was my most significant attempt to distinguish my appearance from hers, without resorting to plastic surgery. Once we both went off to college, things improved. I initially informed my family that I had been accepted to the University of California, Los Angeles. When it was time to move, I loaded my belongings alongside Abby's. When she drove out of the driveway to head right, I went left, claiming I was visiting a friend to say goodbye, although I had already said my goodbyes the previous night. I was en route to Florida. For anyone wondering how I pulled this off, yes, my parents were in on it, and it was even my father's idea. During my senior year, I experienced a breakdown in my room regarding college applications. My father came in to comfort me and assist where possible. My parents were genuinely good to me. They just related more with Abby since she was more receptive to attention than I was. I confided in him that I did not want to be near Abby during college, that I wanted to be my own person and not just Abby's twin. However, I feared that if she discovered where I was applying, she would follow suit. Simultaneously, I desired to celebrate my college acceptance with everyone. My father suggested that I apply to whichever schools I favored, but to substitute different college names in the applications. Therefore, I applied to the University of Florida while presenting it as UCLA. When I was accepted to Florida, I informed everyone that I had been admitted to UCLA. My father bought me UCLA merchandise, which I wore on days designated for college shirts at school. I even listed UCLA on my graduation application, as our school announced students' future colleges or careers while walking across the stage, handing out triangular flags representing school colors along with a teddy bear donned in collegiate attire. Mine was adorned in blue, yellow, and white. The night before I was set to leave, while Abby was out with friends, my father retrieved a box from him and my mother's closet and presented it to me. Inside were numerous University of Florida shirts, hoodies, and sweaters that he had collected from various shops and thrift stores. On my bed lay a white, a blue, and an orange daisy, accompanied by a small flag representing the University of Florida and a tiny teddy bear dressed in a Gators shirt. I cried. Our move-in dates for our respective dorms were not the same. Mine was a week later. So, with my roommate, I shared my entire story, and we devised a plan to rent a small Airbnb by the beach and stay there until it was time to move into the dorms. When my second semester of college arrived, I formed a substantial circle of friends, and I genuinely felt like I was breaking out of my shell. I had not heard from Abby personally since the day we left, although my mother informed me that Abby had expressed anger about my situation. My mother explained that attending different colleges should not be an issue since we never got along anyway. Fast forward to my third semester. I had been in a relationship with a guy, we will call him Brian, for 4 months, and decided to make our relationship Instagram official by posting a photo of us at a tailgate together. However, I did not think to block Abby on all my social media accounts when we moved. Abby's first action was to attempt to connect with Brian, flirting with him and requesting FaceTime calls, but he quickly blocked her as he was aware of our history at that point. However, she escalated her behavior once more. She created a fake Facebook account in my name, donned a black wig, and took inappropriate photos of herself. Then she joined our college's Facebook group under the false identity and posted numerous pictures with the caption, "Sorry guys, Brian, whom she tagged, didn't want these, but I figured someone here would. Hit me up if you like what you see." This post circulated quickly, and many individuals mistakenly thought it was me. I reported the incident to campus police and our dean, explaining that it was not me. I zoomed in on the photos, pointing out where the wig was imperfect, highlighting that she lacked freckles and so on. The head of social media for our school banned Abby from all of our school's social media accounts, both personal and fabricated, while issuing a statement clarifying that this person was not a student at our institution, but was impersonating students and should not be engaged with. I also made a post on the school page to clarify that this was not me, and as unbelievable as it seemed, it was my twin sister. This post included zoomed-in screenshots where I had cropped out her inappropriate images, while illustrating the same wig and freckle discrepancies I had previously presented to the police. I also requested that anyone who encountered social media accounts claiming to be me without a long history of posts block them. As for everyone else, I cannot say whether they believed me. It was the truth, and that was all there was to it. However, my friend group supported me and defended me whenever necessary. The administration of my school convened a meeting with me concerning the situation, during which I detailed my and Abby's history and even mentioned my deception about the college I would attend just to avoid her. They banned Abby from our campus as a precaution. Brian and I graduated from college and moved in together to a moderately sized town in North Carolina. When we relocated, we also obtained a new phone plan and changed our numbers. Between college and this point, I had acquired a prominent tattoo on the back of my arm, a long black and white flower. We lived and worked in North Carolina for about a year when we received the call that my mother had terminal cancer. After discussing it with family and friends, we decided to move back to my home state, but we settled about an hour away from my hometown. Regardless of whether Abby returned or not, which she did, we did not want her to know our address while she was nearby. Once we got somewhat settled, I reached out to Abby and invited her to lunch. During our meal, I mentioned that, given our mother's illness, I hoped we could leave the past behind us and at least manage to coexist for the sake of our mother. To my surprise, she readily agreed. We attended numerous family gatherings during this time, which resulted in Abby being around my husband and me quite often. However, she behaved herself and things remained amicable between us. About 5 months ago, my mother's cancer worsened and she passed away. Brian and I chose to remain where we were for at least the remainder of the year. I wanted to be close to my father during this difficult time, as I knew I needed him and felt he needed me as well. 3 months ago, we had dinner with my father, during which Abby informed us that she would be moving back to California to return to her former job. Brian and I even helped her pack and leave. Once she was gone, we resumed our no-contact policy. 2 months ago, a close friend from college invited me on a girls' trip to Cancun to celebrate her 25th birthday. Initially, it was a last-minute plan and I was hesitant to go. However, both my dad and husband encouraged me to take a break and have some fun after everything that had transpired, so I took off work and went. The trip lasted 6 days and we had an excellent time. But what I returned home to discover left me utterly shocked. It turns out that when Abby claimed she was moving back to Los Angeles for her old job, it was a lie. She had been fired from her position in Los Angeles. In reality, she relocated to a town 2.5 hours away from our hometown. On the second day of my trip, I made an Instagram post. I had Abby blocked and I believed she was in Los Angeles far from any mutual acquaintances. However, she was not. A girl from our high school alerted Abby to my post. From the moment Abby laid eyes on my post, she devised a plan. She decided to impersonate me during my absence and would go to great lengths to achieve this. She dyed her hair black, used makeup to create fake freckles and darkened her eyebrows, and even found a tattoo artist, showing him a picture of my tattoo and requesting the same design in the same location. On the 4th day of my trip, Abby did her makeup, donned an outfit that resembled something I would wear, and headed to my father's house first. Upon her arrival, she knocked, and of course my dad was shocked to see me back. Abby claimed that something had gone wrong with my friend's family, prompting an early return. She told him that she had lost the key to my house and asked if she could borrow the spare that we gave him. Naturally, thinking she was me, he handed it to her. To this day, I remain puzzled by how she discovered our address, but she did. She went to my house while Brian was still at work and parked her car on a different street. When Brian came home from work, he walked in to find me in the kitchen. He greeted me with a big hug and kissed me, expressing how much he missed me before inquiring about why I was home early. Abby recounted the same tale to him that she had shared with my dad. Brian began asking about the vacation, curious about what we did and how much fun we had while Abby spun elaborate stories. She eventually moved into the living room to sit on the couch. Brian noticed that my tattoo looked red and puffy, giving it a shiny appearance. He questioned me about it and Abby claimed it must have gotten sunburned. He was skeptical, asking why only the tattoo appeared sunburned while the rest of her arm did not. Abby dismissed his concerns, saying she had no idea but that it felt sunburned. After a moment of scrutiny, Brian continued to observe her. She glanced over at him with a flirtatious look, telling him that she really missed him and asked if he wanted to head to the bedroom. Hesitant, he reiterated his question about how only my tattoo appeared sunburned. Abby instructed him to drop the subject, and he approached her for a closer inspection of her arm. He remarked that the tattoo appeared freshly done. She froze, panicking for a moment before asking what he meant. Brian then walked back into the kitchen, asking where my luggage was. Abby claimed she had put it away. At that instant, Brian texted me to ask how I was doing. After a moment, he kept his gaze fixed on Abby. She picked up the remote and began browsing for something to watch on the television. A minute later, he received a text from me saying, "Having so much fun, miss and love you." He realized immediately that something was wrong. He called out Abby's name and she glanced at him before looking away, asking why he referred to her as Abby. He declared, "I know you're Abby and I want you to get out of my house before I call the police." Abby, attempting to protest, insisted she was clearly me and accused him of acting irrationally. He suggested that he might call me if that were the case, but she resisted, accusing him of being irrational yet again. He reiterated that he would either call me or the police. She had nothing more to say, merely walking out. Brian held off on informing me of the situation until I returned because he did not want me to worry. When he finally told me, I was furious. We immediately went to my father's place to discuss the incident, where he confessed that he had given Abby the key, thinking it was me. We promptly called a locksmith and arranged to have our locks changed that same day. That night, Brian and I stayed at my dad's house. We decided then that we would move back to North Carolina at the earliest opportunity and also agreed to press charges against Abby. The following day, Brian and I filed a police report. The police were able to trace her current address. Over the next few weeks, every time the police knocked on her door, she was not there. Now Brian and I have just returned to North Carolina. We are still getting settled in our new home. Abby has since been arrested. During her interrogation, she broke down and confessed that her plan was to mislead my husband into sleeping with her while pretending to be me, record it, and send it to me. Additionally, a search warrant was obtained for her residence, revealing that she was involved in drug dealing, including marijuana, methamphetamines, and opioids. She has been charged and received a 14-year sentence, along with $150,000 in fines.